Hey, how's it going? Master Cal here, and today I'm going to be going over the off-season preview for the Jacksonville Jaguars, who hold the number one overall pick in this upcoming draft. The Jaguars were expected in the offseason to land that number one overall pick, especially after the moves they made trading away guys like Calais Campbell and AJ Bouye, releasing Marcel Darius. So, kind of getting rid of the last pieces of that team that reached the AFC Championship game way back in 2017. The Jaguars shocked many by winning their first game of the season against the Indianapolis Colts. But after that, they would lose their next 15. And actually, that one win was almost enough to cost the Jaguars the number one overall pick. But the New York Jets, who had been winless up to Week 15, wound up winning in that game against the LA Rams. And since the Jaguars had the tiebreaker for strength of schedule, the Jaguars were put in position for the number one pick, and the Jaguars lost out, which clinched them that spot. So the Jaguars will be able to select a certain quarterback with that pick. We'll get to that later. The Jags will have a new head coach with Urban Meyer coming in out of retirement. Obviously, spent a lot of time in the college ranks, Ohio State, Florida, Utah. He's been an analyst the past couple of years, but he's going to be coaching Jacksonville, and we'll see what he can bring there, especially as far as drafting and scouting goes. So let's go over the Jaguar starters by cap hits. So at quarterback, we have Gardner Minshew, sixth-round pick in 2019, who burst onto the scene early as a rookie after the injury to Nick Foles that year, and he provided some exciting, electrifying play. He led the Jaguars to some wins, he has not been consistent though. He has had some bad games in there. And his 2019 season got off to a good start, obviously led the Jags to a victory in Week 1. And then he put up some solid offensive numbers in a couple of losses in the next couple of weeks. But after that, his play slipped. And then he suffered an injury and then lost the starting job to Mike Glennon after that. At running back, we have Reichwell Armstead, who I believe was a fifth-round pick in 2018 or 2019. He is actually not the starter. The actual starter is James Robinson, who was an undrafted signing last year. And the only thing Robinson did was finish third in the NFL in rushing yards behind Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb. So obviously there's a lot to like about him. Left tackle is going to be Will Richardson, fourth rounder in 2018. Richardson was going to be competing against Cam Robinson in last year's camp to start at left tackle. He was not able to win out, and so he spent last year as a backup. Robinson, however, is a free agent, and given his inconsistency, he is unlikely to be back. Andrew Norwell is at left guard. He's in the fourth season of a five-year big money contract that he signed in 2018 with the Jags. He hasn't quite lived up to that. His play hasn't been terrible, but it hasn't been great either. At center is Brandon Linder. Linder was pretty good for them in 2019, played every single snap, but last year his play slipped a bit and he missed some time because of injury. At right guard is A.J. Cann, a third-rounder in 2015, who's been a starter for the past few years now. His play has not been that great either, but he did have a decent bounce back year in 2019. And then Jawan Taylor at right tackle, second-rounder in 2019, who's been pretty good for them. He was solid as a rookie and improved in his sophomore season. Wide receiver, you got DJ Chark. Chark is a second-rounder in 2018, who is probably one of the more underrated wide receiver ones in the league. He did have a slight down year from last year as he missed some time due to injury. And then their next two receivers in the depth chart were rookies last year. Laviska Shenault was a second-rounder out of Colorado, and Colin Johnson was a fifth-rounder out of Texas. Shenault had a pretty good rookie year, and Johnson didn't really play too much. At tight end is Tyler Eifert, who was a first-rounder of the Bengals back in 2013. We all know Eifert because he has been very, very injury-prone in his time in the league, and a big reason why the Bengals moved on from him last year. He signed a 2-year deal with the Jags last offseason as a free agent after he did manage to stay healthy for a full season in 2019, but he wasn't much of a factor. He came over because then offensive coordinator Jay Gruden, not John Gruden, was the offensive coordinator at Cincinnati in Eifert's rookie year. But Eifert didn't play much of a role this year either. Heading to the defensive side of the football, Jacksonville's defense was a big reason for them finishing 1-15, as they just couldn't really stop anybody in the running game or the passing game. The Jaguars last year ran a base 4-3 defense. I don't know what exactly their plans are for this season. Their new defensive coordinator comes over from the Ravens, and the Ravens run a base 3-4. So for the purposes of this video, I'm assuming a 4-3 because that's the personnel they have now. So at defensive end, you have Josh Allen, not the Bills' Josh Allen, the Jags' Josh Allen, who was I think he was the 7th overall pick in 2019. Maybe it was the 9th overall pick. I forget which one. But he posted double-digit sacks as a rookie. Unfortunately, he only played in about half the season last year because of injury. Defensive tackle, you got Taven Bryan. He was the Jaguars' first-round pick in 2018. He hasn't played much of a role, however, so he's been a disappointment so far. Next to him is veteran Al Woods, who's been around the league. He was signed by the Jaguars last year as a free agent to a 1-year deal, but he opted out, and so his contract rolled over to this year. Woods has previously been with the Saints. I think he's been with the Bears, and he was last with the Seahawks in 2019. Next to Woods is Kalevon Shafsan. The Jaguars took him with the 20th overall pick in last year's draft out of LSU, and he had some solid numbers as a rookie. At linebacker, we have Myles Jack, who was a second-round pick by the Jaguars in 2016 out of UCLA. He's been mostly good for them. He did have a down 2019 when he signed an extension. Part of that was due to him having to change positions because of, I forget who it was that decided to retire that year. And he had a decent bounce-back year in 2020, despite the overall negative numbers of the Jaguars' defense. Next is Joe Scobert. Scobert is in his second year with the Jags. He signed a 5-year deal as a free agent last offseason, coming over from the Cleveland Browns. Scobert had a pretty good 2019 season with Cleveland, which led him to cash in free agency, and he had a solid year. Next is Quincy Williams, third rounder in 2019. He's the brother of Quinnen Williams. Quincy played quite a bit as a rookie, but he seemed to fall out of favor last year as he was a healthy scratch for some of the time. At corner, you got C.J. Henderson. Henderson was the 9th overall pick by the Jags last year out of UF, and wound up being the second corner taken, and he had an up-and-down rookie year. Next to him is veteran Rashawn Melvin. Melvin, like Al Woods, opted out of last year. He had spent the 2019 as the Detroit Lions' number 2 corner. And then in the slot is going to be Josiah Scott, who was a 4th-round pick last year out of Michigan State. The actual starter there is Chris Claybrooks, who was a 7th-round pick in that year's draft. At safety, you got Gerard Wilson, who's been with them for several years now. And Wilson played every snap in 2019, but he missed some time last year due to injury. And then next to him is going to be Doug Middleton at the other safety position. Middleton has played for the Jets. He's played for the Dolphins. He's played for the Titans. He's been on and off the Jags roster the past couple of years between their practice squad and the roster. The actual starter is going to be Andrew Wingard, who was an undrafted signing by the Jags, I think out of Michigan State in 2019. So that's the Jaguars' defensive starters. As far as their special teams go, they have Ross Mastisik, who was an undrafted signing last year at long snapper, Logan Cook at punter, and Josh Lambo at kicker. Lambo missed a lot of time last year due to injury, though. So the Jags currently are projected to have $77.5 million in cap space, which is the most of any team in the league, and that will definitely give them a lot of flexibility. Next, we'll take a look at their free agents. So listing them off, you have corner DJ Hayden, defensive tackle Abry Jones, wide receiver Keelan Cole, wide receiver Chris Conley, left tackle Cam Robinson, center Tyler Shatley, running back Chris Thompson, quarterback Mike Glennon, tight end James O'Shaughnessy, defensive end Aaron Lynch, defensive end Daewoo Smoot, defensive tackle Karan Reed, defensive end Adam Gotsis, tight end Eric Scobert is a restricted free agent, kicker Aldrick Rosas. Rosas filled in for Lambeau for most of the season. Cornerback Greg Mabin, wide receiver D.D. Westbrook, defensive tackle Daniel Ross, cornerback Sidney Jones, safety Josh Jones, who was their starter last year. Running back Dare Ogunbonwale is an exclusive rights free agent. Guard Derwin Gray, exclusive rights free agent. Cornerback Trey Herndon, who was a starter last year, restricted, free agent. And linebacker Dakota Allen is an exclusive rights free agent. So now we'll take a look at what positions they could look to upgrade from. Obviously, with the number 1 overall draft pick, it's going to almost certainly be Trevor Lawrence. So he's going to be their next starter there at quarterback. As far as the offensive line goes, I doubt the Jaguars are just going to give the starting left tackle job to Will Richardson. So you got to figure the Jags will be in the running to sign free agent Trent Williams after he had a pretty good season last year with the Niners. Alternatively, they could explore a trade with the Ravens' Orlando Brown, who seems adamant about wanting to play left tackle, but given that the Ravens locked up Ronnie Stanley long term, obviously Stanley is going to be the left tackle for the Ravens, and Brown could end up wanting out of Baltimore. The good news for the Jags, though, is that if they miss out on those guys, it's a very deep tackle draft class, and so with their other first-round pick, which I think is 26th overall from the LA Rams because of the Jalen Ramsey trade, or also in the second or third round, they can probably land a pretty good player there. They could also decide to shake up the interior of the offensive line if they so want, between Norwell, Linder, and Can. Ben Barch, who was a 4th rounder last year, would probably step into a starting role if either Norwell or Can were released or traded. Norwell and Linder, the Jaguars received some trade calls about last offseason, but ultimately elected to hang on to both of them, and so we'll see if they circle back to maybe trading away some of those guys. If they do, then obviously they'd need a couple more offensive linemen there. So essentially, I would say that Jawan Taylor is the only guaranteed player, or the only player that should be guaranteed a starting job on that offensive line. Wide receiver, I think their starters are fine at wide receiver. They could possibly add some depth given that you have Cole, Conley, and Westbrook are all free agents. Tyler Eifert sounds like a release candidate to me given his inefficiency last year, and I'd expect the Jaguars to see if they can find an upgrade in free agency, such as maybe the Rams' Gerald Everett. Defensive line, I'd say the defensive tackle position will be something to upgrade to help shore up that run defense, and probably push Bryan and Woods into more rotational roles. Given the money they've invested at linebacker between Jack and Scobert, they're probably going to keep both those guys. Definitely, they're going to need a corner. Even if they do bring back restricted free agent Trey Herndon and they don't lose him to an offer sheet or something, they should probably bring one other guy in to get some playing time. I could also see them releasing Gerard Wilson and looking for an upgrade, given that there's a bunch of safeties available in the open market. You got the Jets' Marcus May, you got the Saints' Marcus Williams, you got the Falcons' Keanu O'Neal. So there's a bunch of safety options available in free agency this year, and they could definitely look for an upgrade with their cap space. So to recap then, the positions of need for the Jaguars, quarterback, especially left tackle, possibly interior O-line, tight end, defensive tackle, cornerback, and safety. Those are all the positions they could look to upgrade from, and I would say also some depth at defensive end and wide receiver would also be in order. So that's the Jaguars offseason preview, and we will see what they do besides using the number 1 overall pick on Trevor Lawrence. Thank you for watching and listening, and I hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for the next off-season preview.